It started with a whisper, low, uncertain, almost too faint to notice, a ripple in the still waters of Vatican City, a murmur that passed quietly through marble corridors and among the faithful, barely acknowledged at first. But as the days went on, as subtle changes in the Pope's routine became noticeable, fewer appearances, softer words, a quieting presence, the murmur began to swell into something larger, something heavier, something inevitable. Pope Francis, the 266th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, was not just reaching the end of his papacy. He was nearing the end of something deeper, a chapter in history, a spiritual era. And whether the world was ready or not, he had chosen to leave one final message behind. Not to secure his legacy, not to defend his choices, but to say something that no one expected, and few were prepared to hear. He knew time was short. His health had been deteriorating, not rapidly, but steadily. Those closest to him noticed it first. The way he would pause longer at doorways, the way his eyes sometimes drifted, as if already watching something beyond the room. But even then, he never stopped working, never stopped praying, never stopped listening. And it was in that sacred silence that he began to write. Not with the assistance of speechwriters, not in the polished Latin of papal encyclicals, but in his own hand, page by page, line by line. In the still hours of the night, long after the courtyards fell into darkness, he put pen to paper and poured out a message that would later come to be known by Vatican insiders as the Chilling Testament. It wasn't long, but it didn't need to be, because within its brief paragraphs were truths so raw, so unexpected, and so unflinchingly honest, they would send tremors through the church and through the world. It began not with ceremony, but with something far more human. To the people of the world, he wrote, I have tried to lead with mercy. I have tried to reflect the light of Christ into the darkest corners of our time. But I leave this world with a heart that is troubled, not because I lack faith, but because I fear that faith itself is being replaced. Replaced by what? That question would haunt readers for days. He continued, We have built towers of power, where we should have built bridges of compassion. We have turned silence into policy, and policy into a shield against the cries of the poor, the migrants, the broken-hearted. I do not speak only of the church, but of the world, which is now driven by forces that promise peace while stealing the soul. It was unlike anything ever written by a sitting pope. He did not name names. He did not cast blame at governments or institutions. But his meaning was clear. The moral compass of humanity, once pointed toward justice, empathy, and shared truth, had started to spin, wildly and without center. But then came the part that would stir the most debate. There are shadows, he wrote, that walk in daylight, forces not of myth, but of method. You will know them not by horns or flames, but by their constant demand. Forget what you once believed. Forget who you are. Trust only what you are told. Was he referring to global politics? To the digital age? To something darker? Something unseen? Even his most trusted cardinals were stunned. It wasn't just a reflection. It was a warning. A slow, solemn unveiling of what he called the great distraction. Beware, he wrote, the distraction. It will not shout. It will entertain. It will not strike. It will soothe. It will lull. And as the eyes of the world remain fixed on screens, the soul will be quietly stolen. The message hit like thunder in the mountains. Some said he was speaking of artificial intelligence, of algorithms shaping our desires before we even know what they are. Others claimed it was a spiritual metaphor, a battle for the human spirit, dressed in modern clothing. A few even whispered of ancient prophecies, encoded messages, and long-forgotten visions of apostasy. Whatever the interpretation, one thing was clear. Pope Francis was not trying to protect his reputation. He was not smoothing the road for his successor. He was sending a flare into the night sky, a final attempt to wake up a world that had fallen asleep with its eyes open. But the message wasn't only grim. In its final pages, there was something more, something deeply personal. He spoke of children, the ones he had kissed on foreheads in dusty villages, the ones he had watched cry in refugee camps, the ones who still believed in kindness before being taught division. They still carry the light, he wrote, but for how long? When we teach them to love filters more than faces, clicks more than connection, what becomes of their hearts? And then came the line that would be printed, etched, and carved into stone, forever linked to his name. If I am remembered for anything, let it not be for what I wore or where I lived, but that in my final breath, I still believed that love was stronger than death. The room where the letter was discovered has become something of a shrine now. Visitors report feeling a strange stillness there, not fear, but reverence, a quiet that hums with meaning. And since that message was made public, something unusual has occurred. Churches, long dormant, have begun to stir, not with noise, but with questions, not with answers, but with reflection. Because the Pope's final words didn't tell people what to think. They reminded them how to feel, to cry again, to care again, to question what they've accepted without blinking. It wasn't a doctrine, it was a plea for humanity to return to itself, a plea for hearts to soften before it was too late. Pope Francis didn't predict the end. He didn't name a beast or call down fire. What he gave the world was something infinitely more terrifying and more sacred. He told the truth, and in that truth, he handed the world a final gift, not the answers, but the courage to start asking the right questions again. Because even the loudest voices on earth eventually fall silent, but the echoes of truth, those never die. And perhaps, in that final message, Pope Francis did not just leave behind a warning, he left behind a torch. Now it's up to the world to decide whether to carry it or let the darkness return. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on to never miss a video.